All right, brother, I want to make this video real quick, man. And to be honest, I love to get y'all's feedback on this brother's question as well, right? So this question was on my last video, and brother Melvin Colombo asked this question. He said, "Hey, Soul, can you explain how you believe in no heaven and hell as a place, but then at the same time mention the good Lord? What about the commands of the good Lord? Are those relevant? And if the Lord is truly the Lord, wouldn't that be so that the laws are to be obeyed?" It's kind of choppy how he wrote it. Then he says, "Sorry, I'm just searching for wisdom. All respects to you, sir." I love it, and I don't know if he's a young brother or an older brother. It really doesn't matter, man. But I think it's important, man, that when one of us, one of our tribe, man, reaches out and asks a real question like that, that we answer. And again, I know we all have different ideas about what he asked and different mindsets and different. So I would love to get y'all's feedback as well. But brother Malcolm, my idea on it is this, and I would have to start the conversation by giving you my viewpoint on the Bible, right? I believe the Bible to be one of the greatest books ever composed, of course, but at the same time, I look at the Bible just as I look at the master key system, just as I look at outwitting the devil. I look at it as some information that was inspired by God and put there by man. Except for the Bible, you look at a book that's been translated and cut up and chopped, a million different times. So again, I look at the Bible as a truth, but again, I read it with discernment. So a lot of what I see in there, I take it one way. Some of it I don't accept at all. So now, to get to the point of, to start the first part of the conversation where you mentioned heaven or hell, and I know you didn't really ask me to go off into that, but just in case you just forgot to ask, I want to just kind of skim through that real quick. Now, when it comes to heaven and hell, I believe all of us believed in that thing, and a lot of us probably still believe in that as young children and as younger or uninformed adults. But as I began to get older, well, first let me say this. I believe the whole concept of a heaven and hell is meant to paralyze people. Because the whole time I was growing up, even in my early 20s, when I thought about a heaven or a hell, of course I thought of heaven as a paradise, streets of gold type energy. But I was like, man, like I don't want to go to this burning place for the remainder of my forever, for eternity. So just that thought alone put me in a state of paralysis where I couldn't even move spiritually. Like I was afraid to even expand on a spiritual level because I was like, I don't want to cross any gun lines. Like if I cross a gun line, I'm sure to mess up. So let me just stay here. Let me just listen to what's coming from the pulpit. Let me just give my 10% to try to buy my way past the pearly gates. Let me just try to be a certain way. Let me try to just have, let me just try to be full of light energy so I don't go to this burning pit for the remainder of my days, right? And I can easily, and maybe just by me saying it like that, you can easily see how it can keep a person in a box for 100 years. You know what I'm saying? Like if you just fly safe and be a good little young man that you can go to heaven, but if you cross the gun line, you can go into hell, it makes you stand still. It makes you stand still and want to stay in a space where everybody's saying, you need to be here. You need to learn this. You need to do this. Right? But what happened was, like, and I'll say this, I would have to say that my mind started changing. I would have to say that my mind started changing after I had a child. Right? Because, as I watched my son grow up, 2, 3, 4 years old, in my mind, I'm telling myself, there's nothing he could do in life. There's nothing he could do to me. There's nothing that he could do on this planet that would make me want to cast him to a lake of fire for the remainder of his days. And then I said, if I'm made in the image of God, then surely I'm not more moral than God. Like, of course I have a dark side energy where I can take life if I have to. But my own child, my own creation, like even if my son attempted to take my life, I still wouldn't say, okay, you know what, you need to go burn in hell forever. So that's what started raising the eyebrow, like, hey, this whole heaven and hell thing, like it can't be real. And once I separated myself from that, I was able to expand. You know what I'm saying? I was able to expand. So just to kind of finish off on that conversation, heaven and hell, in my opinion, are states of being. Heaven and hell are places or states of being while a person is here on earth. Like even when you look at the Bible, there is no reason why a Bible or any book should give you instructions on the next life. You know, like any instructions that came from prophets or the Messiah or preachers, like why would it give us instructions on how to conduct ourselves in the next life? So when I think about heaven and hell, man, it states here, like when you're in alignment with your truth, you're in paradise, you're in heaven, you're in bliss. You know, when you're aligned with your vision, when you're aligned with source energy, which I'll get to that in a second, you're in a state of bliss. And I'm gonna tell you this: it doesn't matter your financial situation. It doesn't matter, all these worldly things we talk about. Like you can be in that state of bliss and pretty much have absolutely nothing. Now I'll tell you this, bro: if you stay in that state long enough, you'll be able to obtain whatever it is you want. You'll be able to obtain your version of paradise. So even when it's said by certain people or in certain books that, like for example, like when I look at our objective of even being here, it's kind of like I said in yesterday's video, the video you commented on. Our objective is to be born into this plane, to see all this going on, and find our way back home. Find our way back to self. Find our way back to the kingdom. Find our way back to God. Like that's the whole objective, the primary objective. But a secondary objective of being here on this planet is to, you might have heard this in your Bible, I'm not sure what this is written, but is to bring your heaven upon your earth. Your whole objective is to bring your heaven upon earth. So it's not talking about the streets of gold and the many mansions, per se, down to earth. So when it talks about bringing your heaven to earth, it's talking about your vision. It's talking about your mindset. It's talking about the highest level of living. Bring that into existence and roam peacefully in that energy. And roam peacefully in that energy. You know what I'm saying? So that's my whole take on heaven and hell. Now the second part of that, man, you said, and I'm glad you said this. I had to hit the heaven and hell part first. In a nutshell, you pretty much said, if I'm saying XYZ about heaven and hell, why do I keep saying, okay, and the good Lord, and I'll say that. I'm gonna tell you this. When you hear me say things like, the good Lord, or when you hear me say, to be honest, when you hear me say anything outside of the word source energy, I'm really saying that to capture people that would run at the name of anything else. You know what I'm saying? Like my objective of getting on YouTube is not to get on here and say, hey, everybody is wrong. My objective is to take my light, display my light, but put it in a way where it can be received. You know what I'm saying? And I understand that if I'm sitting there saying source energy, which is really what I consider it to be, and I'll tell you why. I understand that if I don't use words like God, or if I don't say things like the good Lord, which if you're from down south, that's kind of how a lot of preachers talk. Or if I say things like sometimes I'll say, when I'm referring to Jesus, I'll say the messenger. You know what I'm saying? Or I'll use other words. But if I don't say Jesus, a lot of people will close everything else out that I say. So in order to get what I consider to be light into the hearts and minds of people that are watching, I'll use words that they can relate to, right? Now, getting back to what I see God is and why I really don't, for me speaking to myself, I don't use the word God, but I know it's a universal term. First, I don't use the word God because when most people use the word God, they're referring to, or they're speaking to light energy as opposed to speaking to what a God would be. Like when a person refers to God, they say, okay, this God is the all-knowing, all-powerful, yada yada yada, like it's the big dog. But at the same time, they'll say that this God has an opposing energy called the devil. You have to understand, when people break it down like that, they're not talking about a God. They're not talking about an all being. They're talking about light energy versus dark energy. Where when you're talking about God, or in my case, when you're talking about source, you're talking about the thing that everything is within. Both light and dark is within it. Both good and bad. Both everything is in it. And at the same time, so first off, understand that when most people say God, they're looking at something that's opposing. At the same time, when a lot of people use the word God, and people might not really say this, but when a lot of people say the word God, if you ask them what they're seeing or what they're speaking to, they're going to say that they're going to, and they might not say it, but they're going to think about it real quick. They're going to see some man-like figure, And I can remember this, man. My son was young. He had to be about 6 years old, man. He was a small child, 5, 6 years old, and me and him were praying one night. And I was walking out the room, man, and I turned around and I asked him. I said, "What do you see when you praying? Like when you close your eyes, what are you looking at?" And he said, "Yeah, I see this real tall man," which is normal, because that's kind of like what's put into our minds. And I kind of explained to him. I said, "Man, God is not a man. God is everything. Like God is everything that is and everything that is not. He is both the result of thought going into physical." I didn't tell my son that, but he's the thought of going into this ether, the manifestation of that. He's also the ether that's in the void, the ether outside of material things. That's raw God energy, man. So when I say source, that's really what I'm speaking to. I'm not speaking to anything that has genders. I'm not speaking to anything that has physical features. I'm not speaking to anything that has a face that I can see. Even when I say kind of like I code to her chemistry, even when I say things like I've seen the face of God, it's not a physical face. It's a frequency of wholeness. Like there's no face of God that you can see. But I'm gonna tell you this: there are a lot of people in pulpits of America, in pulpits around the world, that are still speaking to some entity with physical features. You know what I'm saying? And that's why they give God this Santa Claus-esque type energy. Like, make sure you're good, boys and girls, and God, quote unquote, Santa Claus is gonna bestow its blessings on you. So God doesn't work like that, man. God is literally everything. But a lot of times when I start my content off and I'm speaking about that source, or I'm speaking about that messenger or messengers, a lot of people will close ears. And it's not about having ears closed. It's about again giving people light. And if I gotta use certain word, if I gotta use the word Allah, if I gotta use the word Buddha or Jesus or any of these other words that people can identify to keep their hearts open long enough for me to speak my truth and see if they can identify with it, then that's what it is, man. So yeah. So when you say why do I say the good Lord but I don't believe, and then you said another point there, man. You said, if the Lord is truly the Lord, wouldn't there be some kind of laws that must be obeyed? Yes, there are some laws that must be obeyed, and they're universal laws. Like they're universal laws, and I don't want to go into the whole. For example, like the they shall nots and all that kind of stuff. I'll say this. Like, yes, there should be governing bodies and there should be laws that keep people from taking people out. But you gotta understand, a lot of times when we're reading in the Bible and it's talking about like the 10 Commandments and all these other things on how people should conduct themselves, it's really speaking to, it's really in some cases in the Bible, It's a prophet or it's a messenger speaking to a group of people that are going through something, that are living in chaos, and it's like, hey, these rules are for you. Like, this is how y'all need to conduct yourself because y'all wilding out. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I think I made a video about this some time ago. At the same time, and I'm trying to look at the camera, man. I keep looking outside, man. I just got to Phuket, man. We got to Phuket today, man. Finna do some exploring down here, and I'm just looking outside, and it's just, I mean, there's no beach front of them, but it's just looking at these trees. You know, I've been in that concrete jungle. For a minute in Bangkok, man. So just to see a little greenery, man, and see, I think we're a ways from the beach. We kind of out here in the middle of nowhere, man. This is a brand new hotel I saw online. Pretty nice little setup. But that's why I kept looking outside, and I hate not looking at the camera. But yeah, this is a nice little setup, man. Nice little room, man. If y'all come to Phuket, nice little joint. You know what I'm saying? Cool little joint. But at the same time, brother, like we can talk about commandments and rules and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you have to understand. Like you hear me say the word. You hear me say the word. You hear me say the word truth a lot. I use the word truth a lot. And to be honest, it's almost like every day I'm still understanding how powerful a truth is. But having said that, kind of going back to what you were saying, talking about the laws and should be obeyed and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, you got to understand, in some cases, not even some cases, in pretty much every case, somebody's truth, which is them living in their purpose, which is them bringing their heaven up on earth, a lot of people's truth will offend somebody. Like a lot of people will look at, I used some examples on the video I talked about. I'll try to see if I can remember what video that was and pin it. But a lot of things that people are looking at you, Brother Colombo, a lot of, like, you can be living your truth. You can be, let's say for example, prime example. Let's say for example, you go down to your corner and you set up a stand, like a little workshop, you know, and you start selling raw tobacco, just raw tobacco leaves, right? Somebody might drive by and say, you know what? He's out there selling tobacco. Like, hasn't he heard on the news that tobacco is doing this and causing this illness and people are getting sick? Like, he's wrong. Like, what laws are in place? Like, he's violating the law of God. At the same time, you have a whole group of people that have scientific evidence, that have raw evidence that tobacco cures a lot of illnesses. And I heard you can't say this word online no more, but the big C word, the C word that takes a lot of people out, you know what I mean? Not the 19, but the other C word that's growing inside of people. Like they say tobacco, raw tobacco, not cigarettes. They say raw tobacco kills that. And they've been knowing it for years, right? So somebody can look at you and say, man, this guy is pretty much the devil. He's pretty much the devil. But inside of your mind, you're living your truth. Inside of your mind, you're doing a good thing. So your truth, everybody's truth is going to violate somebody. So again, going back to the Bible, I know the Bible is going to have all these words and laws and thou shalt nots and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, I take that with a grain of salt. And again, I use my own discernment and I use my connection with source. And I just use what's been instilled in me. Like I don't have to read any laws that say thou shalt not kill. I don't have to. If that wasn't in a book, I wouldn't be born and just wake up being a mass shooter. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just know instinctively that unless my life is in danger, I don't have the authority to be taking life. You know what I'm saying? So I hope I answered your question, brother. And I'm glad you asked it, man. You know, I'm glad you asked it. And at the same time, any brothers and sisters that are watching this video, man, feel free to give brother Colombo some advice as well, man. Anytime any of us are reaching out and kind of asking, because I believe you came from a real sincere spot, brother. And again, let me say this. Don't accept my truth as your own. Like don't accept like I'm speaking my truth, but the words that I'm saying, like there's a God there's some God energy in you that's hearing what I'm saying, and you're saying you could either put it in two buckets, like hey, you know what, there might be some truth to what soul is saying. Oh, and this is BS. Like have your own discernment, brothers, or brother Columbo. But again, a million thanks for that question, man. Hope I answered it for you.